Have you ever had the strange feeling of being alive and still missing something? As if there was a part of you trapped behind a mirror, watching you, hoping that you see it for real. You know your name, your profession, your CPF. But what if none of this said who you really are? Because perhaps the most important question of your life has not yet been asked with courage. Who are you when no one is looking? You know your name. You know your social security number, your cell phone number, your email address. But what if I said that none of this answers the most essential question in your life? Who are you really? We live trapped in roles: professional, student, mother, son, friend, enemy. But none of them reveals the truth hidden under the surface. Most people go through life without ever daring to face this question in the mirror of the soul. They wear the clothes of social convenience, speak what they expect them to speak, and love how they were taught to love, but not as the heart asks to love. What if you were not a name but a symbol? Imagine that your true identity is not in what they say about you, but in the archetype that pulsates silently inside your unconscious, waiting to be remembered. The magician, the warrior, the healer, the wanderer, the priestess, the rebel, the sovereign, the lover. These are not fictional characters. They are primordial forms of the soul, ancient as time, that live within all of us. Each human being carries in itself a symbolic seed, an archetypal pattern that, when activated, transforms existence into mission. But how many people die without finding out which archetype they came to incarnate? Ask yourself, are you living as who you are, or how they expect you to be? This is not a rhetorical question, it's a call. Because there is a price to pay for ignoring what you were born to be: the emptiness, apathy, the constant feeling of being out of place, even when everything seems right on the outside. Have you ever felt that? Waking up with a restlessness that has no name. Living a life okay, but where everything seems warm. No great tragedy, and yet something is missing. This is the whisper of the unlived archetype. It is your inner magician crying out for magic, your inner queen begging for sovereignty, your lover demanding passion, presence, intensity. Modern life trains us for efficiency, not identity. But living without identity is like wearing a mask that sticks to your face, to the point of forgetting who you were before you put it on. What if you started to investigate? Not the who I want to be, but the wildest and truest who I am behind everything. Would you allow yourself to hear the answer? Perhaps you find that you have not come into the world to please, but to enlighten. Not to belong, but to reveal. Not to follow, but to remember. Because when you align with your archetype, something changes. You stop acting and start living. You stop seeking validation and start emanating presence. And the world starts responding differently, but don't rush. The journey has barely begun, as the real question still echoes. Who are you when no one is looking? Why do some presences delight us and others empty us? Have you ever felt that you were giving too much? Being overly accessible, always available, always answering, always explaining, and in the end, being less and less seen? We live in a culture that glorifies the exhibition. It says, show everything, post more, answer quickly, be always present. But what happens when your soul is constantly touched by hands that did not ask for permission? The excess of exposure steals the mystery, and the mystery is the soul of symbolic value. The video that inspired this reflection hits when it reminds us that distance is not indifference, it is art. The art of creating a sacred space between the I and the other, an interval, a pause, a veil. Because what is immediately attainable loses its brightness. What is always there becomes furniture. Did you become emotionally mobile? Always there, always easy, always predictable? But think, what delights us in a temple, a relic, a masterpiece? The fact that not everyone can touch it, not everyone can understand it. It is the space between object and observer that generates reverence. Do you have a sacred space around you? Or do you live energetically invaded, responding by reflex, justifying yourself, explaining everything? Psychological distancing is a form of sovereignty. It's saying, I'm not for everyone. That's fine. It's not about arrogance, it's about value. Value is born of scarcity, awareness of presence. It is about understanding that your time, your attention, your soul are not common goods. And when you withdraw, not as an escape, but as a centering, something magical happens. People begin to look for you with more reverence. Your word weighs, your silence speaks, your presence becomes an event. That's where the mystery begins. That's where you become magnetic. What if you stopped being a public domain and became a sanctuary? Not to drive the world away, but that only enters who knows how to kneel before the sacred. Do you have a price or presence? There are people who enter an environment and immediately something changes. The air seems to reorganize itself. Conversations decrease. Energy bends. It's not because they scream, it's because they are whole. Have you ever met someone like that? That person who doesn't talk much, but everything he says has weight. Who looks you in the eye, and suddenly you feel seen, not by your masks, but by something deeper. Someone who listens with his whole body, who does not react but responds. The video brings the example of the barber Ray. But he could be a Zen master, an ancestral midwife, or an old storyteller who lives in silence high on a mountain. No matter the profession, what matters is the quality of presence. To be emotionally expensive is not to be cold. It is to be so whole, so authentic, so centered that your energy becomes rare. Have you noticed how most human interactions today are empty? People talk over each other, laugh out of obligation, praise to manipulate. But when someone appears with truth in silence, full of meaning, it is like an oasis in the middle of the desert. Such people are not available for any conversation, any energy, any noise. They do not sell themselves by applause. They are not for sale. Are you an experience or a product on sale? Think about it. Being emotionally expensive is to make your energy a refined space. It's like an invisible temple that walks with you. People don't know exactly why, but they feel it. They feel you are not ordinary, that there is depth there, that there is history, pain, light, shadow, and consciousness. And then your presence becomes a gift, a privilege. But you treat yourself like this? Or if you throw yourself whole in any empty conversation, beg for affection in closed doors, explain too much your soul to those who have only come to touch its surface. The truth is that no one will value you beyond the level that you value your own energy. You teach others how to treat you by the way you treat yourself. So look around. See who you share your silence with, who deserves its presence, who knows to hear its depth without trying to diminish it. Being emotionally expensive is not to be unreachable. It is to be unalterable by any wind. It is the kind of person who, even in silence, leaves marks where he passes. Have you ever noticed that there are people who command the environment with few words? They don't scream, they don't try to convince, they don't impose, and yet you feel something in the voice, in the rhythm, in the silence between one sentence and another. It's as if the whole world is bent to hear. We live in an era where everyone talks but almost nobody says, where communication has become noise, not presence. But the video reminds us, words have weight when they carry soul. True authority does not come from volume, but from alignment, of coherence between what you say and what you vibrate. The calm with which you occupy your inner space before occupying any stage. How do you talk to yourself? What is the tone of your inner voice? Is it of judgment, haste, demand, or is it a voice that guides with firmness and compassion? The way we speak on the outside reflects the way we think on the inside, and people who exercise authority without effort are those who have already pacified internal wars. They do not speak to prove. They speak because they have something to say. Less is more. Yes, this is one of the greatest lessons of silent power. The pause between words is as good as the right word. Silence before the answer reveals more than 1,000 justifications. And the choice of each phrase, each tone, each gesture is like a sculpture that is carved in the air. Have you ever tried to slow down your speech? Breathe before you answer? Leave a purposeful silence where there would be hurry? Do it. And notice, people will start to really listen. Not because you speak louder, but because you speak deeper. Language is the temple of consciousness. Each word can be a spell, a sword, an embrace, a portal. but it is only used with intention, with presence, with alignment. So ask yourself now, do my words have root, or are leaves loose in the wind? Perhaps it is time to silence the noise, speak less, feel more, and when you speak, that every syllable carries truth. So your language is no longer just voice, becomes vibration. Have you ever felt someone's presence, even before she said a word? Maybe it was in an unexpected meeting, a look crossed by a corridor, or even before someone who just entered the environment and made time seem suspended for a moment. Nothing was said, but everything was felt. The video invites us to realize that silence is not absence of sound, it is condensed presence. It is the space where the soul breathes. We live surrounded by hurried voices, incessant justifications, opinions thrown like shots in the wind. But the truth is, the more aligned you are, the less you need to say, because the silence of someone who knows speaks with your eyes, with the rhythm of breathing, with the calm of gestures, with the invisible force of those who do not bend for any reason. Are you afraid of silence? Most do. Silence forces us to find what is inside, to face the thoughts without noise, without distraction, without mask. That's why so many run away, turn on their cell phone, open a tab, invent some noise. But silence can be a throne. When you sit in it with presence, it becomes your crown. The person who is at peace with silence does not need to justify himself. It does not run to fill the empty space, because it already fills it with what it is. It is the content, even without words. Have you ever noticed how the spiritual masters, the elders of wisdom, the true leaders speak slowly? They leave pauses, look in the eyes. They do not dispute attention. They deserve it, because their presence does not come from the ego. And here's a paradox. The more you quiet down, the more your vibration gets amplified. Have you ever experienced just being? Star without pleasing, without apologizing for existing, without performing. Simply inhabit the moment with depth and dedication. This, by itself, transforms. It's like a silent rock in the middle of a noisy river. It doesn't need to swim, it just is. So the next time you enter a space, ask, am I occupying this place with presence or just noise? Because the soul does not need a megaphone. It needs fertile silence. And whoever masters this silence becomes unforgettable. The world reads symbols all the time. Before you say a word, they've already told you everything about yourself. The way you walk, the brightness or the absence of it in your eyes. The clothes you choose, the objects around you, the way you hold the glass or cross your arms. Everything speaks. Everything communicates. The question is your image telling the right story? The video reminds us strongly, you don't need to own a palace to be one, because true nobility begins in the details, in the coherence between what you vibrate and what you show. A warrior may be dressed in simple clothes, but carries in his gaze the trace of what he has won inside. A magician may walk in the silence of the city, but his walking carries decades of unspoken wisdom. A queen may be in slippers, but her posture makes the environment bow. This is symbolic alignment, when the external symbol is faithful echo of your internal landscape. And the result? You become red without having to explain yourself. Because there is a language that precedes speech, an aesthetic of the soul. Have you ever entered a place and, even before meeting someone, felt that there was presence? Or did you see a person who exhaled truth, not because he was tidy, but because he was whole? The symbol is not about ostentation. It is about intention. The difference between someone who wears an ordinary outfit and someone who wears an idea, a concept, an energy, is abysmal. The first covers the body. The second reveals the spirit. What does your environment say about you? What do your work table, your home, your mirror tell the world? Do you live among dead symbols or among living icons of your soul? Symbolic alignment is when your aesthetic choice is not a disguise, but an extension of your essence. It is when your style does not seek to please but to reveal. And this does not require wealth. It requires consciousness. You can have coffee in a simple but purposefully chosen cup. You can wear a necklace that represents an entire journey. You can light a candle that carries memory instead of just lighting. What was once banal becomes ritual. What was once appearance becomes presence. The world sees what you show, but you feel what you are. When the two align, you become a symbol. Are you a work on display or a copy in production? We live in a world where every day someone tries to tell us how we should look. Which color is fashionable? What haircut values the face? Which style conveys success, accessibility, power? But true aesthetics is not about following trends. It's about revealing essence. The video proposes something radical, that its aesthetics be a living extension of its inner world, not a packaging to sell, but a signature to reveal itself. Have you ever thought of your aesthetics as a symbolic curation of your soul? It's not just about dress up well, it's about dressing yourself, choosing with intention, to create a visual language that speaks for you even before your mouth opens. Imagine, an archetypal lover walks fluidly, with warmth in his eyes and details that suggest sensitivity. A warrior carries structure, shoulders, focused look, precision of choices. The magician wears layers, textures, hidden signs as secrets. The sovereign, even in jeans and t-shirt, makes it clear that the throne is internal. Who are you energetically? And more importantly, your external appearance translates this inner being, or hides it. The world is already saturated with people who get ready. What's missing is people who reveal themselves, and that goes beyond the clothes. It's the tone of your voice, the smell you choose to carry, the symbols on your wall, the color palette you use, the music you let play as the world enters your presence. Aesthetic curatorship is subtle art. It's making the invisible visible. You don't need much, but you need intention. The right aesthetic amplifies your frequency. It attracts those who recognize you even without knowing you. It communicates belonging to a field, an ideal, an energy. It is the altar of your presence. So, before you leave home tomorrow, stop and ask yourself, what do I want to evoke? What is my body wearing, fear or truth? Make your reflection in the mirror a ritual, and your aesthetic a mirror. Because when your appearance is not performance, but expression, you do not need to explain yourself. You are read, felt, and remembered. What is luxury after all? For many, luxury is still confused with excess. Shiny gold, stamped marks, high figures, expensive places. But there is a new paradigm emerging, silent, deep, and transformative. And he says, the new luxury is being. In the video, it becomes evident. It's not about how much you have, but about how much of you is present in everything you do. It is not the price of clothing, but the intention with which you wear it. It is not the five-star restaurant, it is the silence with which you taste the simplest food. Have you ever experienced the luxury of a real conversation without distractions? Have you ever felt the luxury of being with someone who looks into your eyes and listens to the end? Have you ever been the kind of person who turns a common meeting into an unforgettable moment just by your presence? That's the real sophistication. It's not in the labels, but in the energy you carry. Are you an experience or just a product? Products are exchangeable. Experiences are unforgettable. You don't have to be fancy to be memorable. It must be whole. It must be. The inner wealth cannot be bought. It is cultivated, and it begins in the depth with which you live your emotions, your spirituality, your daily choices. How does your inner world go? Do you feel full or always missing? Do you know yourself or just show off? Because there are people who enter an environment with a radical simplicity, but everything around changes. They do not carry brands, carry peace, carry truth, carry soul. This is the luxury that no one can take away from you, and also the only one that really matters. You may be sitting on a bench in the square, drinking homemade coffee, wearing an old outfit, and still be more luxurious than any executive on a New York rooftop. Because the real luxury is the quality of your presence. And when you cultivate that, everything around you rises. Not for ostentation, but for resonance. Have you ever experienced this kind of abundance? If not, maybe it's time to stop hoarding things and start hoarding meaning. The luxury of the new era is not in having, it is in the being, with intensity, with intention, with wholeness. Have you ever felt that invisible weight, that silent pressure to fit? Being ordinary is the way that many choose not to disturb. It is a comfortable refuge, where it does not stand out, it is not questioned, it is not exposed. But the price? It is invisibility. It is an erased existence. It is the slow death of the soul. The video makes it clear that there is an urgent call to refuse this compliance, to reject the idea that we should please everyone, all the time, sacrificing our truth. Who would you be if you stopped seeking approval? If I abandoned the masks that the world expects? If I embraced the two parts of yourself, those that scare, that shine too much, that do not fit in boxes? Living in alignment with your truth is revolutionary. It's an act of courage that breaks invisible chains. Have you ever noticed how many people live a small life to fit in small expectations? How many avoid conflicts, not out of fear, but out of the desire to be accepted? But what if true acceptance came only when you were whole? When did you stop asking for permission to exist? When did you become, without asking for permission, a hurricane of authenticity? This refusal to be common is not empty rebellion. It is ancestral wisdom. It is a deep listening of your inner archetype, which knows that you were made to shine, not to erase. You are willing to be too much for those who do not understand, too much for those who are afraid of your light, too much for those who prefer the surface. But just for that, you will be unforgettable. Being ordinary is easy. Being extraordinary hurts, but it transforms. Have you ever noticed how what is always available loses its shine? The modern world teaches us to have everything and have it fast. But there is an ancient magic that insists on resisting this rush. The power of mystery, the value of scarcity. In the video, it becomes clear, being always accessible can take away your strength. When you are always there, the desire dilutes. The mystery is emptied. What happens when you decide to become rare? Not rare in the sense of cold distance or indifference, but rare as a jewel that chooses when and for whom to shine. Rare as a presence that does not give in to the first invitation. When you create space, a sacred space between you and the other, you activate a primal force, the desire for the unknown. The mystery is a silent language that attracts without having to explain. He is the invitation to discovery. For adventure, have you ever felt this attraction? When someone looks like a blank page, a story waiting to be read. When is the silence between conversations as charged as words? This is scarcity in action. It generates respect. It generates value. But there is a challenge. How to create this space without closing? The secret lies in the balance between presence and absence, between delivery and reservation, between clarity and enigma. You can be deep and accessible without being an open book. You can be generous without emptying yourself. It is a delicate, almost alchemical game. But when you master this art, you are no longer just a person. You become a beacon, a pole of attraction that radiates effortlessly. Are you willing to become this mystery? Not to deceive, but to honor its complexity, its uniqueness, because the true desire is born on the threshold between known and unknown. And you, what are you making visible? What are you keeping for yourself? What if the extraordinary was not in distant places, but in the heart of your daily life? The video shows that true magic happens in the ordinary, in those small stories, simple but loaded with meaning. Like Eliza, who turns the simple act of arranging a house into a ritual of care. Or Ray, the barber who turns a cut into an almost sacred experience. They remind us that we don't need external greatness to be powerful. The daily life, when lived with attention and presence, becomes the stage of our transformation. Have you ever stopped to observe your day? How many small actions could be done with more intention, more soul? Turning the ordinary into extraordinary is a forgotten art. But it is the only one that guarantees a lasting impact. It's not about waiting for epic moments, but to realize that every gesture, every word, every choice carries an infinite potential. The real transformation happens when the routine is no longer just routine, when it becomes a path to self-knowledge and the expression of our essence. Are you willing to live your life as a moving work of art? To see beauty and meaning in the simplest actions? To be in everyday life a living expression of its archetype, this is the silent revolution, the invitation for every moment to be a reflection of who you really are. And when you do that, the world responds. He resonates with your energy and puts you at the center of your own story. There is a magic that transcends the content, an aura that involves every word, every pause, every silence. The video is not just a sequence of ideas, it's a poetic dance, an invitation to dive deep into the invisible, the sacred. The language chosen is not only to inform, but to raise, touch, and transform. She creates images in the mind, awakens dormant senses, lights that ancient flame that pulsates inside the soul. When we hear or read something with this intensity, something changes. It is not only the mind that understands, but the heart that feels and the soul that recognizes. This profound message speaks of an awakening, of the encounter with oneself, of reconciliation with the shadows, of surrender to one's own truth. It is an invitation to leave the superficiality and dive into the depth of being. Each word is chosen as the one who paints a picture, with delicacy, precision, and intention. And this poetics is not empty or only aesthetic, it is a bridge. Between the conscious and the unconscious, between human and divine, between immediate and eternal. Do you feel this vibration? This invisible melody that runs through the text and creates a resonance? She reminds us that true knowledge is not only in what we know, but in what we feel and live. That the journey is not linear, but circular, an eternal return to ourselves. And that, in the end, all we are is the poetry we choose to write in our existence. And now, tell me, who are you when no one is looking? Do you recognize yourself in the words that you read? Or did you realize how much you still have to unravel about yourself? This journey is not only about reflection, it's about awakening. What archetype pulsates in there, waiting to be remembered? If something touched you, share with those who need to hear it and tell me in the comments, what part of this text spoke directly to your soul? I am here, listening, in silence and with presence. I see you in the next video.